Okay, welcome to Algebra 1. We're going to take a look at our first lesson today. What you're going to need in order to complete this is your textbook and your notebook. And we're going to be using those during this video. You need to have those out as well as a pencil ready to go. If you don't have your graph paper notebook yet, you're going to need that very soon. Just use a piece of paper for now and you'll have to transfer that later on. Yeah, all right, so let's go. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by opening up our notebooks to page 1. We're going to label it page 1, and we're going to label it the table of contents. Okay, we're going to be using this table of contents to keep track of what we're doing. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to label this with our first topic. We're going to label it as big or small as we need. We're going to label it 1.1 variables and expressions. Please do that, variables and expressions. I'm not going to wait for you to write things down. If you need more time to write things down, please just pause the video. Okay? All right, turn the page. Label page 3. This will be table of contents continued. And then I want you to skip to page 5. And here's where we're actually going to start. So at the very top, we're going to label this 1.1 variables and expressions. Okay? Anyway, like I said, I'm going to go kind of fast, but if you need to rehear something, just pause the video and watch it again. All right, so this lesson comes from your textbook on page 7. Okay, so all this stuff that we're going to do here together comes from page 7. So go ahead and open up your textbook to page 7. And what you're going to see is some examples and then some check your progress. We're going to do the examples together. You're going to write down what I write down. And then at the end of this, you're going to do the check your progress examples, and I'll tell you what those are. And then when we have class next time, we're going to go over those together, and there'll be some group work on time for that, and we'll be giving you a grade for that. Okay, so for right now, all you have to worry about is writing down what I write down, and try to copy and pay attention. Make sure you're really paying attention. If you need to go back and hear something again, just rewind the video. That's what's great about video. All right, so variables and expressions. And what our goal today is, our goal is to take verbal expressions and to translate them into variable expressions. Okay? So we're going to take some verbal expressions, we're going to translate them into variable expressions. We're also going to learn how to evaluate some powers. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to do the first step backwards. We're going to translate some variable expressions into verbal expressions. Very easy, okay? If you need to take some time to write it down, pause the video. All right, so here we go. Let's jump into some examples. We're going to do some examples together. We're going to start off with example 1, and this is found at the top of page 7. Okay, at the top of page 7, you should have that out and looking at that. All right, top of page 7, the directions say, write an algebraic expression for each verbal expression. Okay, and what it gives us is it says 8 more than a number. My task is to translate this into a variable expression. All right, so it's actually pretty straightforward. I'm going to look at what I've got. I'm going to see what words mean numbers and what words mean operations. So the word 8 literally means the number 8. No surprise there. The term more than is going to be the mathematical symbol of addition. And then finally, more than a number, they don't tell us what number, so in order to represent a number that we don't know, we have to write a variable. So let's just choose n to represent the number. A lot of times we use n to represent a number, sometimes you use x, etc., etc. And that's it. So what we've done is we've changed this verbal expression, 8 more than a number, into a variable expression. Easy. Let's do another one. 1b. 7 less the product of 4 and a number x. All right. So this one's a little bit longer, a little bit more complicated, but we can do this. All right, we're starting off with the number 7 So we're just going to start off with 7 less. So we're doing 7 less. Notice it doesn't say less than something. It just says 7 less something. It's a subtle difference we're going to come back to later. 7 less what? So we're doing less, which means we're going to end up subtracting. So 7 less something. Now what is that something? We would expect to have a number right here, but it's actually not a number. It's actually a phrase, and that phrase is product. And what a product is, if you remember, a product is simply a multiplication problem. So we're going to have 7 minus a multiplication problem. So the dot is going to be multiplication. We're not going to use x. You might use parentheses, but for right now we're just going to use a dot. 7 less the product of what? Well, it's a multiplication between two things. Well, what are those two things? Well, one of those two things is 4. And the other thing is a number. Now they tell us what this number is. They tell us it is going to be represented by x. And so here we go. We've done it. 7 less the product of 4 and a number x is simply translated into 7 minus 4 times x. Now one thing we can do to make this look nicer is we remember that when we ever have a number multiplied by a variable, we don't need to write the dot. So we'll just simply write this 7 minus 4x. Got it. Cool. All right, again, if you need to slow down, check, just pause the video and do that. All right, cool. 1c. 1/3 of the original area A. All right, here we go. Let's take a look at this. Well, 1/3 is pretty simple. 1/3 of 1/3 is going to be a fraction. 1/3 of. Now, the word of is a very small word, but it's a very important word. The word of in mathematics means multiplication. So 1/3 of something means 1/3 times something. So it's going to be 1/3 times what? The original area A. So I'm just going to write 1/3 times A. And again, just like I did up here, when I have a number times a variable, I don't need to write the multiplication sign, so I can simply write this as 1/3 A. Or if you want to get really fancy, you can write it as A over 3. And if you understand why, awesome. If not, then check with a group member tomorrow about why this is okay. All right? All right, next one. 1D. Here we go. The product of 7 and m to the 5th power. All right, this one starts off pretty straightforward. The product, which means tells us we're going to be multiplying something. What are we going to be multiplying? The product of 7 and, okay, so one of the numbers we're going to be multiplying is 7. And the other number we're going to be multiplying is m, but not just m, it's m to the 5th power. And if you remember how to write m to the 5th power, it's simply m and then a little 5, okay? All right, now let's see if we can remember what we did before. Do we need to write this dot here to represent multiplication? No, we can simply write it as 7m to the 5th power, okay? All right, so I wanted to show you what we've done right there. What we've done is we have successfully translated a bunch of verbal expressions into variable expressions. So I'm going to put a check next to that because I did that. All right, so I've just translated a bunch of verbal expressions into variable expressions. All right, let's keep on going. There's some practice problems that we're going to come back to at the end. Okay, all right, here we go. Example 2, something different. Okay, example 2 says something a little bit different. It says evaluate 2 and then a little 6. And if you remember, what that is, just like 1D above it, is it's a power. And what this does not mean, it does not mean 2 times 6. What it means is 2 times itself 6 times. And so the trick to do is to know what the word evaluate means. When you see the word evaluate, that means really to find the value of. So this number, this expression has a value, and how do we find it? Well, it's going to be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So that would simply be 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32, times 2 is 64. So 2 to the 6th power evaluated is 64. And that's what it means to evaluate a power. All right. So just like I did the first set of examples, I have just also learned how to evaluate a power. All right, our last little bit. How do I translate variable expressions back into verbal expressions? And if you'll notice, this last set of examples is just like the first one, but backwards. All right, let's take a look at this. Let's go down to the bottom, and here we go. We'll do example 3. And there's 2 examples here, example 3a and 3b. The instructions say, write a verbal expression for each algebraic expression. So here we go. 4m third power. Okay. So one way to do this is just to say it out loud and write what you say. Or we could get a little bit fancy like we did above and write this as what it is. Well, I see a couple things. I see 4 times this expression, m to the third, and then I also see this m to the third. So I might want to just say this is the product of 2 things. What are those things? Well, one of those things is 4, and the other thing is m to the third power. So there we go. We just did it. 4m to the third power, or sometimes we say 4m cubed. We simply write as the product of 4 and m to the third power. All right, great job. 3b. Let's take a look at this one. All right, there's a lot going on in this one. There's a power of 2, there's 21 times d, and then there's this plus sign. So if you remember order of operation, what you might remember is that this plus sign is what happens very last. And since this plus sign is what happens last, I'm probably going to start with the sum. Remember, sum means the sum of things. This is actually the sum of 2 things, the sum of this thing and the sum of this thing. So the sum of c squared, that's one of the things, that's this, and 21 times d. And we've got it. We just translated this variable expression into a verbal one. So that's all set. All right. So what have we done so far today? We've translated verbal expressions into variable expressions. We've evaluated and we've translated variable expressions into verbal expressions. Okay. So what we're going to do now is you are going to, on your own, you're going to do the check your understanding parts of this. If you look on in your book on page 7, understanding, on page 7, you're going to see a bunch of examples. You're going to see 1a, you're going to see 1b, you're going to see 1c, you're going to see 1d. You're also going to see check your understanding number 2, and you're going to see check your understanding number 3. Right now, in your notebook, I want you to complete these 6 check your understandings and bring them to class next time we have class, and we will go over them together. You will work in your groups out of them, and they will be part of your grade. Great job today. Make sure you have all of these notes down. Make sure you've done your check your understanding part, and make sure that if you have any questions or didn't understand anything, you go back and watch those videos again. Don't forget to comment on the discussion, and I'll see you in class.